Thank you for coming to tonight's event with Gwyneth Lewis. This is going to be a combination of Gwyneth reading and us being in discussion. I've known Gwyneth, I think, for 35 years.
Oh, God.
She's not that old.
So,
I'm amazed.
yes,
Yeah.
1990, the first anthology we worked with on.
No.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Anyway, I have to thank the Arts Council England for supporting the festival and making all of this possible. And as we will shortly hear in our discussion, Gwyneth Lewis has been writing since she was 7 years old. She says she's never lost the childish delight in playing with words in both Welsh and English. She was Wales's first national poet in 2005 and wrote the bilingual 6-foot-high words on the front of the iconic Wales Millennium Centre in Cardiff. Her first collection in English was Parables and Faxes, which I published at Bloodaxe in 1995. But that was actually her second book of poetry, following her Welsh debut in 1990. Bloodaxe has just published her 10th book of poetry, First Rain in Paradise, which is her 6th collection in English, and she'll be reading from that tonight. And that is intertwined, as it were, with her memoir, Nightshade Mother, a Disentangling, published last year by, was it Calon or Calon?
Calon.
Calon, which describes the effects of being emotionally abused by a controlling mother. First Rain in Paradise is a book about falling. Gwyneth Lewis's highly inventive poems trace an interior landscape carved out by the trauma of childhood emotional abuse, through subsequent chronic ill health and towards a hard-won resurrection. These accounts of living in and emerging from the dark wrestle with the angel of language. Suffering does not preclude humour and may, in fact, require it in poems written from the shadows but committed to the light. This work refuses to keep pain a secret. Shame is a lurking presence. The book opens with Spiderings, a gothic horror sequence about the effects of maternal abuse. Then comes a descent into the underworlds of debasement and debility. The third title sequence begins with a 15th century manuscript depicting the fall of Adam and Eve, and the poems presenting a portrait of a drenched, catastrophic landscape, asking how human trauma relates to a fantasy Eden. Gwyneth Lewis has won wide acclaim for her versatile and varied writing across genres, most notably in her award-winning poetry in both English and Welsh. And this book shows a deepening of her technical, imaginative, and intellectual resources which are challenged and exercised to the full. The poems map uneasy terrains with realism and, most importantly, with joy. First Rain in Paradise and Nightshade Mother alerted me to the subtext of her earlier Bloodaxe collection, Keeping Mum, which started out as a translation of her previous Welsh poetry book, whose title translates as The Language Murderer. Usually Gwyneth writes one book in English, then a completely different one in Welsh. Only Welsh speakers got to see how both sides of her work express the dual personality of her country. Ruth McElroy has described how Lewis's books mark a shift into a different gear of Welsh poetry in both languages. She's one of very few poets to be equally probing and technically sophisticated in both languages, intuitively sensitive to the peculiarities of each. And as well as her poetry, Gwyneth has published 2 other memoirs, Two in a Boat, a marital voyage, and Sunbathing in the Rain, a cheerful book about depression. And in 2022, she was awarded an MBE for services to literature and mental health. With Rowan Williams, she translated the Book of Taliesin for Penguin Classics. She was brought up Welsh-speaking in Cardiff and studied at Harvard, Columbia and Oxford before working as a television producer at the BBC for a number of years. And in 2014, she dramatised her book-length poem, A Hospital Odyssey, for the BBC, broadcast on Radio 4's afternoon drama, and delivered her Newcastle Bloodaxe poetry lectures at Newcastle University, later published in the book Quantum Poetics by Bloodaxe. Gwyneth has taught regularly at Middlebury College's Breadloaf School of English in the US. She was visiting lecturer at Princeton in 2014 and has been artist in residence at Balliol College, Oxford, which awarded her an honorary doctorate. She also teaches online for the Writing School and for the WISE programme of NHS Wales. So would you please welcome Gwyneth Lewis.
Thank you.
And we will begin the event with Gwyneth reading from and talking a bit about Nightshade Mother.
Yes, I think I will stand up to read. It's, well, no, I won't. I'm thrilled to be here at Ledbury. Thank you so much. This is just the best poetry festival. There's no other way around it. So I'm thrilled to be here. And also I want to thank, before I start, Mike and Pat Strauss for putting up with me and putting me up. So thank you very much for that, and to Ledbury for the kind invitation. It's really important to me to be taking part in this festival. I'll start with the opening of Nightshade Mother, and I'll read perhaps a little outline of the situation, because it takes, to give a full account of emotional abuse and a lifetime's emotional abuse, it takes a long time to build up the picture, because any one incident in itself is not, it doesn't sound like much, but it's the whole context and the string of it. But I'll preface this with saying that my mother's name was Ariel. I never called her Ariel, but in this book, because I'm writing as her equal, I call her not as my mother, but Ariel. And this is about when she was on her deathbed. And you'll understand what it is to say what she said to me is worse to say to a writer than people who don't write, perhaps. The last thing my mother said to me before she died was, "Shut up." In hospital, suffering from pneumonia, Ariel began to call her own parent. "Mum," pause, "Mum." The moan was as penetrating as a lamb crying for her ewe. I overheard her comment to a nurse, "I don't know why I want her. We didn't even get on." But when it comes to the really big crises in life, only your mother will do. While Ariel was unconscious but still alive, I asked her to forgive me for anything I'd done wrong. She never told me that she loved me. That was too much to ask. And besides, Ariel's generation didn't speak like that to their children. I waited for an apology or even an acknowledgement, which would have changed everything, but it never came. During one of the nights I kept vigil with her, Ariel began to show signs of agitation. I called a nurse. I didn't dare hold Ariel's hand, even though she was dying. Welsh speakers can identify each other even when conversing in English. So while she was preparing an injection, the nurse and I made small talk in Cymraeg, our voices low. Suddenly, Ariel commanded, "Shut up." Even at death's door, she couldn't bear for me to speak. I missed her last breath, but I sat for a while with the body. Out loud, I said, "Well, we had a good fight." Already, I felt safer. Writing a book about an abusive parent requires meticulous good faith and a proper degree of fear. When they were alive, I never called my parents by their first names. In fact, I wasn't even allowed to address them by the familiar T in Welsh. Even more oddly, they used the formal chi, like vous in French, towards each other. In this book, I use their first names. I've told you that. When Sherman Alexie, the Navajo author, was promoting his book, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, about his mother, he cancelled the tour because he became convinced that her reproachful ghost was haunting him. Given that my life with Ariel is literally imprinted on my blood chemistry, she's an ever-present artifact in my body. Her death has done nothing to disperse this effect. In describing my experience of emotional abuse at her hands, I risk arousing a crisis of autoimmunity. What I'm about to write would be, in Ariel's eyes, a gross betrayal, the worst thing I could possibly do to her. While she was alive, she possessed an almost psychic ability to detect when I was withholding information. What if in the afterlife she'd become omniscient? What if she could now see everything I was doing, and somewhere off stage was brewing storms of rage and disapproval, magnified by her new divine abilities? I've already had a dream that Errol turned up at the launch of this book. How am I going to make this all right for her, was my first terrified thought. Given how grave the trespass of outing a narcissist is, blah, 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 the task in front of me is as delicate as pulling a fishhook embedded in my own eye. Now, I checked with Rowan Williams, seeing as I know him. We've worked on a translation together. I asked him theologically whether mothers become omnipotent after they've died, and he didn't think so. So that was very comforting, in case you were wondering. Yes. That gives you a flavour of the approach I took to the abuse, or to this account of the abuse. But you had, I mean, I think in my earlier poetry, I think I had addressed it quite a lot, but in code.
Definitely in code. Yes.
And, you know, I knew it was there, but I wasn't ready to come out and say, because I'm from a small Welsh-speaking community and everybody knows each other, especially because my mother was a well-known teacher. She was a very good teacher. It makes you very reluctant to break somebody's privacy, even when it's killing you. Not talking out.
That allows her to get away with it.
Yes, yes. So I wanted to read a little bit. The difficulty, I can't understate the difficulty of writing this book, because when you've been emotionally abused, there are certain times when you feel brave and other times when you lose all courage. So there's a kind of spectrum of what you can say, depending on how your denial is on a certain day. So there's an unstable tone to what I wanted to say. So I discovered a way. I mean, the book started working when I discovered a way of telling the very most difficult things. And this was to do with clearing out my parents' house and finding an old friend in the attic. So I found the dolls, which I never liked, okay? Suddenly, so I'm going through a trunk. Suddenly, I catch the glint of kinder eyes. As my heartbeat slows, a simian face composes itself from the shadow. The skin is a velvet that my lips know well. It belongs to a glove puppet I've completely forgotten about, but whom I recognize as a familiar. Pushing my giant adult hand into the puppet, I bring my ear to his mouth and immediately resume our conversation from my pagan childhood. And I've got a special guest has come here. Hello, Ledbury. And my hand is, as you can see, it's a child's puppet. This is Monkey. Hello.
Monkey has a role in the book too.
Monkey has a huge role, and this is how he works. So he said he's been interjecting, saying the hard things. So he says, "You took your time, Monkey. It's you. So it's your voice I've been hearing. I wasn't far away, just in a part of your brain. My witness. I saw everything, and I never forget. And I'm on your side. Not always a comfortable place to be. Where else are you going to stand? I'm a secret friend. I've been confused for so long. Together we'll work it out, this disentangling." And then later on, Monkey gets more vociferous. And we need to talk about the writing.
Yes.
Yes. But basically, I'm going to give Monkey his thing. He says, well, let's explain about the writing first.
Yeah, I mean, First Rain in Paradise, ironically, the whole notion of first rain is links with your first poem, isn't it? Your first poem was written...
Oh, about rain.
About rain after a visit
Good
to
Lord.
Calon Bay, which I make in 1966.
Yes, my first poem was about rain, and I had not made that connection.
Ah.
And the odd thing was, I wrote this epic poem about rain out of the blue at age 7 or so, and my mother corrected it, which, you know, okay, she was a teacher, but it was not what was required. What was required was just abject admiration. But then things got funny, because she then saw that I wanted to write, and she participated in it and took over my writing, or tried to hijack it. And then she pushed me to compete. Now I'm quite a shy person in my own way, and I don't like competitions, because I don't believe that people are better than each other. I mean, there's better work than other work, but, you know, it's our work. That's the important thing. And so this hijacking was actually a kind of emotional abuse, aside from all the other controlling behavior that was going on, that struck at the very heart of what I found most joyful. So it really buggered up my writing for a very long time.
And you becoming a kind of puppet for her.
Exactly. Well, yes, but this is what lovely Monkey had to say about that. So I was starting to destroy my own writing so that she shouldn't see it. Any poet that knows that it's a short step from destroying your own work to doing the same to yourself. This is the energy your God gave you. It's your muse and yours alone. Where did Ariel's muse go? Locked in its own cage. Poor Ariel. Don't waste your compassion. She's stolen your lion. You need to push the bitch off. So that's the role of Monkey, you know. And he does sound, I must say, a lot like my combative husband. So I was very grateful for Monkey for allowing me to say some of the things that were most difficult, you know. So I'll put him away. Good night, Ledbury.
Do you want to segue into spiderings now, then?
Well, yes. I mean, I wanted to ask you, have you heard of people's writing being abused? I mean, I don't know what to call it even. Have you ever heard of that kind of abuse?
No. Well, except Colette, her husband, took over her writing, didn't he, initially? Willie.
Ah, yes. Yes, but I haven't heard of it between mother and daughter. Except perhaps the case of Marianne Moore is very interesting, because I think her mother was extremely active in editing her poetry, but she was happy with that. So anyway, but yes, so after writing this rather grueling book, and going through a period of pretty serious chronic illness and debility, and resurrecting out of it, I wanted to get back to poetry. In fact, I'd owed you a book for a number of years, and I think I've written at least 3 books that were rubbish before we published this.
Well, you became chronically ill,
Yes.
and that impeded your sort of ability really to move forward on any of those projects.
It
I
did.
wasn't aware of how ill you were.
Nobody was. I didn't
Yeah.
tell anybody because you become ashamed of it.
And you had a collection in which you were wanting pictures of objects, and you were wanting to write poems around those objects as a way of projecting something in some way that I couldn't understand, and I didn't really think the poems worked, and I was rather embarrassed that I couldn't encourage you in that direction because
No.
it just didn't work for me, but eventually you gave up on it too.
Yes. Well, I haven't entirely given up
Oh,
on that. But you know, but it couldn't have been used in that way. It was a way of avoiding something, and,
Yeah.
and I think you commented very perceptibly that I felt as if I'd turned into an object myself. I mean, I had felt I'd disappeared as a person. So,
But then you had the death of your mother, and you had Nightshade Mother.
well,
in a
yeah,
sense.
that took a long time. And then suddenly I was able to write anything I wanted because I'd said the worst. And so this, it allowed me to shape something new because there's no point, you know, there has to be something with a bit of energy to it. So I did the old thing of figuring a mother as a spider. And Pascal Petit told me a chilling thing. I mean, we got similar poems about mothers, at least using the spider image. But she told me that I was wondering about the connection between fear of your mother and spiders, arachnophobia, and she said she'd heard that it was a fear of your mother's hands, which is the most chilling thing I've ever heard and most convincing, I think.
Well, at some stage you also talked about wanting a Louise Bourgeois spider.
You wouldn't let me
But
have
I
one.
didn't think that would work because, in a sense, it was her own art, her own response to her own mother, and you would, in a sense, be borrowing that from another artist. And I felt it was important for you to have your own way of presenting the work.
Well, that's a good argument, yes. But you just said no. But that's fine. I think that's a good rationale. Anyway, so now, I mean, I was arachnophobic many years ago. Now I'm not and haven't been for some time. But anyway, I was able to use the image. So I'll read a couple of these, which are pretty shocking. But I mean, I'm just so thrilled that there's no whole... Oh, I've started. Gazes trap me like weighted nets which have floored me more times than I care to admit. Once I'm felled, down she abseils and crawls tickling inside my ear to lay eggs into my brain. Those cells adjust to their guest with seasons of migraine through which I rest until she emerges triumphant through the arch of my mouth, clad in chainmail of living armor, glittering spiderlings hatched from my mind, if that can be called my own now or home. With apologies to people who are arachnophobic, I am sorry. Snare. I was her legs. I've speared my heart on a pointed stick to attract carnivorous angels, which make a great racket of wings. Others ask, baffled. It's the snare in the brain, spring-loaded for suicide. The knots throb electric. The slithers out, a hot, pulsing snake, through my eyeball, leaving a spider's web tattooed on my face, like a shattered windscreen. employers. But honest, though I tell such horrors, underneath, I'm a bit of a sweetie. And, those are the worst. And to work through to something a bit more, much more so as the book goes on, it becomes, it's really starts in the pits and goes upwards like that.
Do you want to talk about the aspect of this book?
Well, poetry drives you mad as well, doesn't it? In this book, is the discovery of joy again. And, realizing also, it's, when you're very, very ill for a long time, you realize that actually it's not that you're out of life, you're just in a different mode. You can equally be watching, taking details, making notes about the nature of bedbound almost with migraine and suffering from 27 days a month of migraine and 6-week-long migraines. I wasn't depressed, which surprised me because you'd think that would depress you. But in the end, things like this. Poems. Will I? The herb called Will I Ever Feel Better is to be used only to treat the gravest wounds that must, despite the patient's protests, be kept open. Summer comes, summer goes. So little recovery. Being alive is both trauma and sovereign remedy. So it's like the life in itself is the illness. Not that you want to dwell in the illness either,
Celtic Angels and about keeping mum and the Welsh books, but you haven't actually got them with you. So
No, I haven't.
So
no.
I think we should continue with more from First Rain in Paradise.
Yes, if you like.
The trajectory towards recovery, that would be a good line to follow, I think.
I think so. Because that turned to be, I sent you a manuscript before called Lazarus or something.
Yeah, that's true. That was another one as well as
another one.
Yeah.
That was, and you. This is my kind of resurrection poem. I went to Rome and visited a mummy girl. And this is, I suppose, this is my kind of resurrection. Grota Rossa mummy, Palazzo Massimo, Rome. To the basement of jewels and preciousness, to view its chief treasure, the mummified girl, 13 years and 9 centuries old, in a glass coffin. I share my air supply with her, and the child confides that from her sky, faces stare down at her. Then and do I know where Dolly went? She must be so lonely. She's in a separate case, out of reach, so thoughtless. Break the glass, place the toy back in the crook of her arm. She sits up, shows me that Dolly's hips, knees, elbows still move. She's waving hello. Then confides that one time a dog pressed its nose, cold, to the So that's really me coming to life again.
Paradise part of the book.
Yes.
So sort of shift away from what we've been talking about to sort of show other work which has come from this moving forward in your work.
Yes, that's right. Because online, a diptych, two paintings, God with Adam and Eve, and then the first rain in paradise. And these were a manuscript. So here you have God and Adam and Eve, and everything okay. Although their gonads are blurred out. So there's some shame involved. And then this very modern and I thought, well, it's not what, what I liked about it was the blurring of the idea of falling before. I thought that rain in paradise would be a good thing, not a bad thing. So even I like the mixedness of it, because even though you've got rain or chronic migraine in your paradise, it's still paradise if you're approaching it in a certain way. So I wrote some poems about the fall. I'll read the second one about shame, because one of the worst things about the aftermath of abuse is the long-term shame that you feel. So shame. This is after the fall. Yeah, shame. Yes, I held the knife, but the snake with a cyborg face, all rage and reason, made me do it. And yes, we burned down the barn, all those tortoises cooked in their shells, not to mention the matted cats. We lit blackthorn hedges to drifting smoke, foot and mouth funeral pyres, but nobody came, so we hid from the first fat drops. Then it pelted down, zigzagging the hills out of shape, smudging our groins like an artist's thumb. Ashamed, we fled. Anything not to be seen. And this, talking about shame, is a story somebody told me, it's almost verbatim. An anecdote about what happened to him when he was at college. Kidnapped. So this is all in his voice, okay? What japes we had in the 1980s. One night out of term, I was stripped naked, tied up, bundled into a car, blindfolded. Be charming, I thought to myself. They dumped me alone on a pitch black, freezing moors. There was a pub, but nobody answered. Then they came back, switched to full beam, started revving. So funny. I took it all in good part. End of quote. His smiles, the entrance to a mine shaft. And the final, there's one other poem. Here we go. No, I'll read both, I think. Floods. This is set in Oxford. So what you have is Oxford is in a dip, and then the rain takes a couple of days to soak down into a lake and a reflecting surface. Floods. After the hissing pillars of rain, held up in glass temples by intemperate gales, collapsed into rubble, the falling begins. Paths become runnels, carrying twig bouquets, wooing smaller mercury streams from guttering, spilling down gullies into drains that can't swallow, making the road a ford and the A32 a steel-sheeted rink of aquaplane. The floodplain's scrying glass takes days to fill with runoff. Allotments are covered in foil tarpaulins, seeds rot, but under Seaport's waterlogged car park, the arrow shows this way out. Where now are the two who spent their days playing cards in the bus stop? Their tent in the woods is untenable. Floodwater rolls its eyes at the sky as the moribund do, learning to die. Expulsion. So this is from Eden. To blackbirds, the ancient privilege of bringing down day, calling alarm, leave feeders, huddled together in roosts, hide. Photon by photon, Earth turns away from her source. The kingfisher skies flayed bloody. Dark's coming. An owl descends, clutching stars and dismay in her talons. Stubborn as ever, I choose to stay. So I'm not going anywhere.
In Nightshade Mother, you mentioned drinking all night with an East European poet.
Yes.
Is that Adam Zagajewski?
I think it might be.
Do you want to read doily?
Yes. Adam Zagajewski was one of the greatest contemporary...
Amazing poet.
Yeah, an utterly amazing poet who died a few years ago. And yes, I have been drunk myself sober with Adam Zagajewski before now. This is him inquiring about British culture. So, an explanation of doily for Adam Zagajewski. You asked me last summer, what is a doily? Sometimes at lunch, I walk on the beach. This is in Swansea, when I was teaching in Swansea, okay? Today, I was coatless. A storm cloud threatened, dark as a spaceship. Should it pour, a sister ship down in the water would throw up grappling nets to the surface. Rain rise to soak me. Behind a sandbank, waves touch the shore no more than a shimmer. Less rare than its cousin, the antimacassar, a doily's placed between Sweet Thing and China. Both survive where vicars arrive for tea, are given thin cup and saucer instead of a mug. If your cake's so rich that it's leaking syrup, you'll need a doily. Held up, its papers the filigree of snowflake, or fingers looked through in fear. The shower holds off. My shoes are doily. Without it, where would I be on these shells that crunch underfoot like contact lenses as I walk a mermaid on razor-torn feet back to my husband in his human dwelling? Someone is pulling a toy blue trawler along the horizon to port so smoothly it looks realistic. Sea is partly doily. Surfers ride its lace to their downfall. After all, we're nothing but froth. Like a carpet salesman, the indolent tide flops a wave over, showing samples. Madam, this one is durable, has a fringe. Under its breath, the sea sighs. Has it come to this? Must everything always end in doily? It must. Broad afternoon. The rain cloud barges have passed, and here's a cumulonimbus parade of imperial busts, the Roman rulers in historical order, which I think would please you. Their vapor curls and noble foreheads are lit up in lilac because they're invading the West. Next come the philosophers, and last of all, the poets. Pulleys draw them delicately on. Here comes Lucretius, then Ovid, then Horace in lines saying relentlessly, doily, doily, till the stars take over and do the same.
We've not rehearsed this at all. We had an original plan in which Nightshade Mother took up much more of the time. So as we've been going along, I've thought, let's let Gwyneth show people the full range of her book.
Yeah.
And what about stage manager's notes?
Oh,
Would you like
yes.
to do that?
Yes.
I think we should treat them to the full range. Otherwise, they'll just think it's just mother poems.
Oh, yeah, no, there's far more. In fact, the whole point of this book is to move from liberation from the mother poems. But so I think we're getting along enough, aren't we?
Yeah, and after this, maybe we can open it up for questions.
Yes.
And then if those dry up, we'll finish off with a few more poems.
Well, no, that won't happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
There better be a few
I know when people have had enough.
There better be a few questions.
It's been the end of a long day, hasn't it? Okay, so this, I wrote a version of one of the Oresteia, but a missing Oresteia play about Clytemnestra. Let me recap the plot. Agamemnon kills, in order to get to Troy, to get Helen of Troy, Agamemnon sacrifices Iphigenia, his daughter. Clytemnestra, her mother, when he gets back, she's taken a lover, but she's furious and she kills Agamemnon. So it's a bloody play, but I wanted to give Clytemnestra her day in court. This poem came out of the stage manager's notes for that production. So it's a combination of notes and something else. Stage manager's notes. Clytemnestra awaits Agamemnon's return. Move towers to stage, rig pulleys, lunch. Fix lever to floor, chains to stage right, sound quiet time. Call ends. Cast fit up. Cassandra's shoes too tight. Requires size 5. Electra's boots fit okay. Cast out of costume, lunch. Chat with publicity, tea. One more person needed to catch Miss Blythe as Iphigenia when she falls into the trap. Scene 6 will require a bowl. Knives have been ordered. Gravy granules, mint, cochineal is our stage blood recipe. Miss Blythe as Electra fumbled her cling film. The illusory cut on her hand didn't work, so she did it for real. What a professional. Press night. Exit doors chained, as I can't control those furies. One phone went off, soon stopped. Small audience, play well received. Man in G6 is stage 4, and she in A12 won't survive a collision. Bodies fall into hot nets of blood. Long delay for curtain call. Unavoidable. No further notes for today. And I'll end with a really teeny weeny poem, which is set in Australia. And I'm nuts about birds. And this is about 2 birds who have different calls. And I think I describe in the poem the nature of the birds. Ornithology. The wood thrush sings a duet all by itself, using 2 separate voices, while the whip birds one cry, two creatures, nothing between them, though you know the fiction, standing on points sublime to listen. One, are we? One. We are one. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? There is a roving mic. Mr. Roving Mic is there. And we've got a question over here.
Yes, you made almost like a throwaway comment that the poetry makes you mad. I was just thinking of Dylan Thomas, who his father was a school teacher, and he, if we're to believe Fern Hill, had a very happy childhood. And I just wondered, did the poetry make him mad? His kind of erratic behaviour and his unhappiness. Or do you think that? I mean, do you believe that comment, or was it not really true?
Well, I believe it makes you sane, and I believe it makes you mad. I think, and this is why you have to take, people tend to regard writing poetry as an entirely benign activity. And I don't quite believe that, because if it can be therapeutic, it can also be damaging. This is why we have to take great, great care in writing and how you write poetry and what you write, that it's some kind of truth. Now, I think the story with Dylan Thomas is very interesting, and my view is that he painted himself into a corner with his poetry because he elevated poetry into his God. And poetry is not, while it may have divine elements, I don't think it's God. And that, I think, was Dylan Thomas's mistake. I think you can trace that in the work, even though he wrote this amazing work. But then, by the end of his life, he was unable to write anymore.
When you say that he made it his God, do you mean that he made it more important than everything else? So
Yes.
Other things like relationships and family became second to poetry?
I think so. Yeah.
Thank you.
And much is said, talked about his personal life and the drink, and the drink didn't have quite the same importance as we like to think. Other things were going on, but I think it was an artistic problem, because he was such a brilliant, he was a genius, for sure.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I have to say that anybody who writes poetry and has done so for a long time gets and is still well and happy, is incredibly resilient. Because it fosters resilience in and of itself. We're not, sensitive plants. We're the SAS.
Well, on the matter of sensitive plants, I do have a special gift to give you on behalf of Ledbury Poetry Festival, which is the poetry tree.
Oh,
the poetry,
wonderful.
Which is
A
an oak
poetry.
sapling.
Thank
and
you.
All the authors are being given an oak sapling to plant at home or wherever they want to plant it and make their contribution to the planet.
Thank you very much, and it looks a very healthy specimen, so I look forward to planting that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil.
And Gwyneth will be very happy, more than happy, to sign books at the back.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I scored a pot plant. No, but that's a beautiful oak. Yeah. Very robust.